Norwalk, Connecticut, which is right outside of New York City, and they were just local bands and guys that played that kind of music that were sort of from an older era, you know, and so, you know, this music was just in the air, and that's what we played when we were kids. We played Ray Charles tunes, which were actually the tunes that, you know, the kids that were like, you know, 6, 7 years older than me played, you know. And because that's all, you had to play a dance or something, you had to play a lot of songs. So everybody knew What I Say and Kansas City and High Heel Sneakers, and I don't know, you know, those tunes. And then the Beatles came, you know, but you just kept playing the blues progression. All we could play were 3 chords anyway, you know. And I just loved that music, and blues was getting really popular, you know, with the young kids, you know. It had crossed over into white America, and so you know, I just got a lot of blues records. I used to go into Greenwich Village and listen to you know, blues artists, and funk was the thing. I was into, you know, all the great singers more than even the guitar players, you know, and I loved you know, all the Stax Volt records and Motown and the great James Brown, you know, with Pee Wee, and it was a little bit after that I first heard the first funk that Pee Wee and those guys did, the great Pee Wee Ellis's here at the festival. And that's when, to me, I guess it was funk, you know, it was with the song, first it was Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, I think. And that was a different kind of beat, right? Pee Wee. And it changed, and everybody wanted, we all played that song in the top 40 bands, you know, but it really changed everything, that one song. And then I Feel Good came out and it was all over. And then Cold Sweat. That was really like funk, right? Am I right, Pee Wee? Pardon me? First funk tune. These guys invented it, you know, and then funk came in, what they call funk, and I just played along.
Okay, so that's a very understated way of saying it.
Yeah, no, but you know, you learn the stuff, and you know, but mainly I was trying to learn how to play jazz, and I love funk too, and blues, and yeah.
Okay, perhaps we can talk about another formative influence. Fairly on in your career, you joined Miles Davis's band, and I wanted to ask what it was like working with him, and in what ways that experience helped you to develop your style and yourself.
Well, that was the big break, one of the big breaks for me. But, you know, I was already 30 years old, or 29, when I joined Miles, so I'd been playing for a long time. I'd been on the scene in New York, and, you know, playing gigs with various bands. And I think, you know, playing with Miles was like a dream. I never thought I'd get to do it, because he was just about my favorite musician. I had all his records. I used to go hear him play, and I was trying to learn jazz music from his records from the 60s and the 50s. And, you know, that was pretty much the standard canon for jazz music, was Miles's repertoire, you know. And that's what everybody learned, you know, so he was it for modern jazz, just about, if you could say that. You can't really say that about anybody, but it seems, you know, that for my generation, his bands and what he did was just it. So I got very lucky, and when he made his comeback in the 80s, I got to play in his band, and I was with him for 3 years and got to work with him and look inside his head a little bit. So that was good, because I've been a fan and had you know, been talking about Miles with all the musicians and met guys who knew him and stuff, but then getting to play with him was great, just because he was a really into music. And those older guys that were there, you know, for such a long period, you know, because it was 1945. He was 19 when he started with Charlie Parker. It might have been earlier than that, but when he made his first record. And when I played with him was 1982. So he had all those years of just, and before, of just being part of that jazz music at the very top, and witnessing all the great artists. So we would just talk about, he would tell us about Charlie Parker and all, you know, Duke Ellington. We would talk about the people that he really admired. And Coltrane and you know, it's funny, the guys who played in his band, like Wayne Shorter and Herbie, they were like, you know, he talked about them as if they were his kids, you know. And to us, they were the absolute giants of the music, like Miles. Yeah. So it was great to just be around him. And it gave me confidence. I figured if Miles could go for what I was playing, then I was okay. Yeah.
And actually, coming out of Miles Davis's band, you recorded a couple of really interesting albums in the sort of mid-80s, and I'm thinking particularly of Still Warm. On tracks from that period, like Protocol, you explore quite abstract melodic ideas. When you're improvising at the edges of conventional melody, how do you avoid losing the thread of what you're trying to say? How do you avoid things dissolving into meaningless note choices?
Well, what you just said pretty much sums it up, you know. You don't want it to dissolve into meaningless, you know, you don't want to let your fingers do the walking, you know. And when, you know, we're working on some of those more outside type sounds, yeah, I guess you could even run the risk even more of dissolving into meaninglessness. And I think for me, I always love to listen to the improvisers from the 60s that were before me, that were that style of you know, taking it a little further out to the edge, came in, and the guys like Miles and John Coltrane, McCoy Tyner, Herbie Hancock, all the saxophonists like Wayne Shorter and Joe Henderson, and these guys, I listened to them all the time for a long time, and they were really my influences. You know, I would copy licks, but also just listening to records, you know, how they could take it and play those other notes, and Miles was so great at that. So, you know, to somebody who's like a rock fusion guitar player, they might have heard me and said, oh, he's doing something different. But to tell you the truth, it came from saxophone players, you know, and this whole world of jazz players that have been playing like that all the time, you know. And I did it my own way, because we all, you know, find our own way to any music. If you play, you know, the exact licks of somebody else, after a while, it's just too much work, right? I mean, once you learn about music enough to be able to improvise with it, you know, you don't want to have to just play their licks. You can't remember them after a while, even if you learn them anyway. And your own musical thing comes through, so then you do it your own way. And that's how music works. You know, you incorporate this stuff, and then you just talk endlessly.
So you're very deservedly known as an innovator on guitar. Have you ever suffered from a creative block? And if so, how did you find your way around that?
Yeah, you know, you have good days and bad days. And creative block is there for all of us, you know, but, you know, you learn to go through the motions and fake it and play your stuff anyway. And it doesn't feel that good. Sometimes it just doesn't, it might not feel that good to you. You're actually performing okay, you know. And, yeah, you know, it's not, you know, okay, say writing music, which is different than performing, right? You know, you'll have a day when you can't write anything, right? You can't come up with anything you like. And then the next day, you will come up with something. You have to put in the time. So creative block is always there, but you just have to work through it. And as far as playing, some nights it's just not going to be there. And I was so amazed when I heard Miles say that, you know, well, maybe it's just not my night, you know. And that's the way it is, you know. And you become a professional and you can play your stuff and everything. But what was cool about Miles was that he wouldn't get up there and overdo it. you know, trying to play his licks down everybody's throat so he sounded stiff, and, you know, he wasn't like that, you know. And the really good jazz players somehow get through their you know, they can fake it on the nights they don't feel it, and it's not that nervous, they're not nervous about it. And I think that's really important, to not get too freaked out, because then you can really blow it, right? We can get ourselves into even worse trouble than we would have, you know, because most people, yeah, I don't know if they know, you know, when we're really sucking. I hope they don't, maybe they do, uh-oh. I'll never know, none of us will. And that's the nice thing about music, it's just gone, right? As long as you don't record it on your iPhone while we're playing.
Sticking with the sort of theme of innovation, one of your best-known albums from the 90s was I Can See Your House From Here, which was, of course, a collaboration between you and Pat Metheny. How does Pat's style contrast with your own, and what do you admire about his playing, and what did that collaboration give to you?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get to make a record with the great Pat Metheny. You know, I think Pat is, you know, he's a giant in many, many ways. You know, he plays the guitar just incredibly well. And he's got his own sound, which was just there from the beginning. See, I know because I met him when he was maybe not even 18. I think I was like 19 or 20, and he was 17. He had a couple of years under me. And he sounded really great then, and was already had his sound together. I don't know where this came from, you know. But he had it together then. And so playing the guitar, he's got a unique approach to jazz guitar, and a real answer to some of the difficulties of playing a kind of modern way, you know, on the instrument. And he is also a really great composer, I think. And in the kind of, I hate to use this word, but it's pop jazz. And I say pop jazz in meaning that, you know, he takes elements from the really good aspects of popular music, you know, that a lot of people love, that I love, you know, the things that have happened in the last 40 years, you know, more from popular music than from modern jazz, and then mixes it in, you know, into this instrumental music, and came up with some of the greatest songs, you know, and so I really admire him. And you know, he's also got this grand vision, you know, and he's always just going for some huge, big project. And he's always been wonderful to me and supportive of my playing, even though we're, you know, tooth and nail competitors, you know. I mean, we fight out to the last note, you know. It's a war up there, let me tell you, it's a war. And it's beautiful, you know. But it is, it's a, you know, everybody wants to play their best stuff. But he's been really great to me, and he made it really big, and he said nice stuff about me in the press, and I'll always be, you know, grateful to him for that. And how our styles vary, I don't know, you know. You know, he likes Homer and Jethro, and I like, you know, B.B. King. What am I going to say? But that's a joke, you guys. You ever heard Homer and Jethro? Homer and Jethro were pretty good. It's like bluegrass music. You know, he has different elements of music that he brings to his jazz that I bring elements to mine. You know, but basically we're just two different people. And everybody in the room's different. We all are, right? And that's the cool thing about guitars. Everybody plays it differently. Every single person. It's just there's so many ways to play every music instrument.
I'd like to ask another question about improvising. How has your approach to improvising over the years changed? Because when you start out as a guitarist, I suppose often the temptation is to see the fretboard in terms of like patterns and scales.
Yeah.
How has your own vision of the fretboard, your way of unlocking it, changed over the years, would you say?
Well, it's true. You got to unlock the fretboard. And I feel like it's really hard. And in a way you have to unlock it, in a way you just have to forget about it and make music anyway. So that if the notes and the, you know, just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, if that's inside you, you know, and you understand melody, you know, you can do it all on one string. But then you learn how to do it with whatever fingerings you have. The guitar is all played, as I said before, so differently by so many people. I was thinking about Django Reinhardt today, who played with, I've been told, 2 fingers on his left hand, because the other ones were damaged. But these 2 fingers are really strong, right? These other fingers are weak, and we all play with them. If you have them, you're going to use them to play the guitar. But if they don't work, and you can only play with 2 fingers, if you can get it happening, the strength of his tone was unbelievable, you know, with his left hand, and everything was so even. You know, so that's a whole different thing. He just played with 2 fingers. You can play with 1 finger, maybe, and, you know, forget about the fingerings. George Benson mainly doesn't use his pinky, and nobody can play guitar like that I've heard, jazz guitar, you know, as far as fluidity. And I think unlocking the fingerboard is just practice. That's all you got to do is practice all the time, and it'll become second nature.
So another of the tools at the disposal of the guitarist is electronic effects, and I know over the years you've used everything from sort of chorus pedals to pitch shifters to phrase samplers. Are you still excited by the potential of technology to add to what a guitarist can say, or take it in a different direction?
Absolutely. It takes a while for me to incorporate any of these pedals into your sound, and you know, too many guys have just bought the pedals and then brought them to the gig and not know how to work them, and then you know, smoke rises from their pedal board and that's it, you know. But you know, no, there's you know, I use them, just the ones that I have, that I've used for years. There's so much other stuff out there too, and there's you know, just using what's it called, digital, you know, recreations of stuff through your laptop, you know, completely bypassing the actual, you know, electronic devices, but just using virtual effects. That really may be the future. You know, right now, a lot of us still are thinking, well, it's not as good as the stomp box I have at home. If you're guitar players, you know what I mean. But, you know, I think we're going to see, you know, in 10 years, some crazy stuff happening with electronics, and also with the generation now coming up that's very adept at using these instruments. On the other hand, acoustic instruments seem to have something to them that no speaker can reproduce, and I include the guitar as an acoustic instrument too, even though it's electric. It's kind of a hybrid, I guess. You know, there's something about, you know, the fingers and the room and the no microphones involved, and just this wonderful thing that we've done. We've invented these instruments, you know. Yeah, so.
One thing I found interesting about what you were saying earlier on about this whole sort of generation of great music that you grew up with. You know, Ray Charles, the classic R&B, all of that. Do you still think there's a healthy dialogue between pop music and jazz today?
You know, I wonder sometimes, because it just seemed to me in the 60s when I was growing up that you played in, you know, a rock band or whatever. But if you played guitar, you know, you played whatever music it was you did on gigs, which was not jazz, because nobody, except for the greats, got to play that for people to listen to. And then you just played, but there was this, you know, everybody who talked about the guitar that I knew, you know, everybody liked, any good guitarist was aware of jazz and was aware of this sort of hierarchy that these guys were the top. And it seemed like the rock guys that I knew, when it was called rock, and blues and all, everybody recognized that jazz was this. And now I think it's just more separated because music has gotten bigger. There are more musicians. The world has gotten bigger. The world is twice as big as it used to be, population-wise, right? So there's all these new people, and they're all playing. A lot of them are playing music because our generation had kids, and we said, "Go ahead, it's fine. You go be a musician. That's great. I love it. Oh, my child is an artist. This is wonderful." But you know, in our generation, you know, if you told your parents you wanted to be an artist, most parents were like, "Well, I'm going to lock this kid up." Yeah, no good. I was lucky because my parents were okay with it, you know. Yeah.
I suppose a question about quality. There are a lot of guitarists out there, and goodness knows it's hard enough to be even a competent jazz guitarist. But what to you, in your opinion, separates someone who's merely competent, if you want to use that phrase, from a jazz guitarist who is something special, who's really got something distinctive to say?
Oh, you know, I don't know. It's just when you hear somebody and it just makes you listen up and you hear something creative in their playing. And that can be of so many different aspects, you know, and that's part of, you know, the personality comes through, you know. There are really so many different ways to play music, and jazz, for me, has taught me about that. You know, to hear all the great jazz stylists, some guys played a lot of notes, other guys could play interesting music with not so many notes, you know, and then, but it's all, you know, your personality can come through. Some people played melodically, you know, that I liked, and then there was free jazz, but there was something happening, you know. It might have been, you know, dissonant and really hard to take, but there would be certain musics when you heard Ornette Coleman or something, you know, beautiful melodies and you know, this is what defines being a good jazz guitarist. I have no idea, you know, except we just go back to our gut feeling of, oh, I like that when you hear it. And you do that when you play too. You say, oh, okay, that was pretty good. You go, keep going, then you're, you know, meandering around. Oh, it's okay, it's okay. This is while you're improvising. And oh, that's okay. Okay, I'll keep trying. Oh, that's all right. You know, we're doing those judgment calls all the time. But you know, after you've done it for a while, you realize you just keep putting it out there, and you're going to be okay. You know, it's going to be all right. And that's why I'm talking endlessly right now. I keep thinking it's going to be okay. And but you know, as far as like what it takes to be a good jazz guitarist, you know, it's up to you, buddy. You know, I don't know. You know, you just got to practice all the time. That's all. I know that's true. That the more you practice, the mysteries of music will become evident to you. Without that practice being understanding and studying. You know, the more you study and practice your instrument, and a lot of it is, you know, when you don't quite understand this, a lot of stuff I understand, but I didn't learn it. It came to me from constant experimentation. So you just have to really put in the time, put in the energy, put in the effort, and you'll be rewarded, yeah.
John Scofield, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.